If you buy the power supply, this is the package you will get. And in this package is, as described on the website, is everything you need to build the power supply except the AC adapter. I'll show that in a minute. So this is the PCB. It's quite small, and you have 12 volt AC in over here on this end, and then the flow of the circuit goes this way, which ends up with minus 12 volts down there, ground in the middle, and 12 volts up there, with big thick white lines to show which is which. And the reason that it is like this from the beginning, it was a bit of a gap between the three things, but for you to be able to use this both for the power supply or the power cable or ribbon, power ribbon cable used in most eurorack, you can plug that in here, or if you, like me, just want to use dupont cables, you can just fill these rows. And to do that, you get 15 of these black male headers that you can add one 5-row strip to each minus 12 volts ground and plus 12 volts. And then if you want, you can add another 5 pins on your own. And there's also a 2-pinned header, which is red. Can use this on 12 volt AC as well if you want. Alright, enough rambling. Let's build this now. We should start with the small components that's not as high, and that is the diodes in this case. And the diodes they're pointing in one direction, and on one side, on the top side, you have it on the right side, there's an extra line, and if you watch the diodes, there is a gray line on those, and those should match that extra line. So that should be like that. And then we have the other one, and there on the bottom one, the extra line is on the left. So we put that the other way around, like that. So gray line to the left on the lower one, and gray line to the right on the upper one. And these boards you can solder both on the top side and the bottom side, it doesn't matter. So in this case, we can just solder these in place there. When soldering, it is important that when you watch the solder from the side, or when you watch it, it should have if the plate is here, and then the pin of the component you're soldering there, you should have a mountain like that, not like that, to the component. That could mean that it's not hot enough, either on the component or on the board, and it doesn't flow out. So it should flow and be a slope like that towards the component. All right, some basic information there. And then we have the LED. So on this one, the LED has a straight edge towards the bottom, and that is negative, and that's the shortest leg on this LED, so we put it in with the shortest leg down, like so. And this, because the LED is in the way, we need to solder this from the bottom. Now you can just add 2 cables if you want to have this in a panel somewhere. You can add 2 cables and pull it away and set it wherever. I want to have it here, and just to make sure it is straight, because it's not straight right now. So we have soldered 1 pin, and we can just hold the LED with our finger and just heat this up again to make sure it is straight. Still not that straight. Now it's straight. Now we can add solder the other pin, like so. And then we remove the legs. We can immediately use one of the legs for this little thing here, the on-off switch. If you want to have an on-off switch, this is the place to place that. But I don't have that in my modulars, but I added the option to add a switch there. And then of course you need to add 2 cables here out to a switch somewhere to turn it on and off. It's not important. And then we have the oversized resistor. So this was, it wasn't supposed to be a resistor this big, but that doesn't really matter. And when components are a bit too big, like this one is, you can stand them up like that. These are the most difficult components in this one, actually. So these are the 1 microfarad capacitors, the really small ones, and they're supposed to be over here, C4 and C5. And the plus pin on both is towards the top, and the plus pin is the long pin of the 2. And also it's not the one that says minus with a big white line. So minus is of course minus and should be down, and the long leg up. And the reason these are difficult is because they're so small, so the solder pads are quite small as well. So when we add them there, now we see that the underside is very small, so you need to really get in with the soldering iron at a 45-degree angle, so you touch both the leg and the solder pad. Again, just make sure that you get that little mount. This is also one of the few places where you can actually, by accident, solder the 2 legs together. So make sure that you see so that doesn't happen. If that happens, you can just go back and forth with the soldering iron like this, and thus removing some of the solder. So it wasn't the case in this case, but I've done quite a few of these now because I use them quite a lot, and it does happen from time to time. So just make sure you don't do that. And then we have the 7912 and the 7812. 7812 should be up here, like so, and you see there's an extra line up top, and that's this heatsink, and the same with the 7912. There's an extra line towards the right. That's also the heatsink. So we add those two in place. Oops. And this is again one of those times where you just add one leg and then make sure it is straight, because it's not straight now. Do bear in mind that this one gets hot if you hold the soldering iron on the legs too long. This is a heatsink and gets hot. That's the purpose of it. And finally, the two large capacitors. Bear in mind that on the first one, C1 plus is up top. And again, you have a golden line here with minus, and the shorter leg should be down in minus and the long leg in plus. And on the second one, the plus is downwards, so that should be the other way around. Very important that you keep that in mind. And solder these. And finally, how you want to do with your power. As I said, I choose to have 5 of each, like so, with a bit of spacing in between, so minus 12 volts ground and plus volts. And I'm gonna solder this in place. These should actually have been done a bit earlier before we added some of the really tall components. And again, if they're not straight, you can straighten them. And again, make sure you don't hold your finger on the pin you're soldering, because that might hurt. So I don't know if you can see, but here is actually one that is one of those bulbs instead of a inwards shape. So we just do that, and we see it melt together and into the correct shape. There's another one. Now then, we need to make sure that this works, and we need an AC-AC adapter. And here's a little cheat sheet I've made. So you can go out, these are easy to find if you know what you're looking for. Halogen lights is usually always done with 12 volt AC, there's, if you look at the Tindy page or in the description, I have some images of AC adapters that do work. So it should say 12 volt AC, BAC, or 12 volt and a sinus curve. And this is what AC means, alternating current. It alternates between 12 volts and minus 12 volts. And what we do with this circuit is that we separate the two, or the three actually, so we get 12 volts ground and minus 12 volts out. 12 volt DC direct current does not work, and the symbol with a line and a dotted line below it or above it does not work either. It needs to be AC or a sinus curve. That's the adapter we need. So in my case, I'm just gonna add 2 strips of wire, and I have a one of these connectors, but a female one. This is a male one, and I have a female one, and I connect that there and use that. Or you can just, if you have an adapter, you can just use the cables, of course, and connect that directly to this board. It all depends on what you have at hand. So here's that plug I was talking about. And then we have an adapter that works. It says AC adapter. That's good. Primary, because we're in the EU, 230 volts. Secondary, 12 volts. And then we have that squiggly sinus line, 1 amp. So this is a very good adapter for this purpose. And we connect it and see if we get any magic smoke, making sure there's nothing in the way, that all our soldering have been done in a good way. This is always a very interesting moment. And we got light on the LED. That doesn't mean it works, of course. It means that part of the circuit works. And the way to check this is, of course, with a multimeter. So we set that at, this one has 20 volts, which is fine. And then we can measure. So we can measure between ground and minus 12 volts, and that should say minus 12 volts. It says minus 11.98, so that is good enough, I'd say. And a black one on ground again, and red on plus. That reads 12.14, also good value. So that means our circuit works. So with this small exercise in soldering, and or just, if you've done this before, just soldering this together, you got a good enough power supply, plus minus 12 volts, for your modular or other synthesizer project.